Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere.
On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year.
He said to his friend, "If the British should march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light."
1, if by land. 2, if by sea. And I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and sound the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm for country folk to be up and to arm.
Then he said good night, and with muffled oar silently rowed to the Charlestown shore, just as the moon rose over the bay where swinging wide at her moorings lay.
The Somerset, British man of war, a phantom ship, with each mast and spar across the moon, like a prison bar.
And a huge black hulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide.
Meanwhile his friend through alley and street wanders and watches with eager ears, till in the silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barrack door.
The sound of arms and the tramp of feet and the measured tread of the grenadiers marching down to their boats on the shore.
Then he climbed the tower of the church, up the wooden stairs with stealthy tread, to the belfry tower overhead.
And startled the pigeons from their perch on the somber rafters that round him made masses and moving shapes of shade.
By the trembling ladder, steep and tall, to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen and look down a moment on the roofs of the town, and the moonlight flowing over all.
Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred with a heavy stride, on the opposite shore walked Paul Revere.
Now he patted his horse's side, now gazed on the landscape far and near, then impetuous stamped the earth and turned and tightened his saddle girth.
But mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the old North Church, as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and somber and still.
And lo, as he looks on the belfry's height, a glimmer and then a gleam of light.
He springs to the saddle, the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes till, full on his sight, a second lamp in the belfry burns.
A hurry of hooves in the village street. A shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles in passing a spark. Struck out by a steed that flies fearless and fleet.
That was all. And yet through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night. And the spark struck out by that steed in his flight kindled the land into flame with its heat.
It was 12 by the village clock when he crossed the bridge to Medford town. He heard the crowing of the cock.
And the barking of the farmer's dog, and felt the damp of the river fog that rises when the sun goes down.
It was 1 by the village clock when he galloped into Lexington. He saw the gilded weathercock swim in the moonlight as he passed.
And the meeting-house windows, blank and bare, gaze at him with a spectral glare, as if they already stood aghast at the bloody work they would look upon.
It was 2 by the village clock when he came to the bridge in Concord town. He heard the bleating of the flock,
and the twitter of birds among the trees, and felt the breath of the morning breeze blowing over the meadows brown.
And one was safe, asleep in his bed. Who at the bridge would be first to fall? Who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball?
You know the rest, in the books you have read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball behind each fence and farmyard wall.
Chasing the redcoats down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again, under the trees at the turn of the road, and only pausing to fire and load.
So through the night rode Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm.
A cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore.
For borne on the night wind of the past, through all our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need,
the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed and the midnight message of Paul Revere.